All right, we've got a little smaller group tonight, but that's okay. More will be watching the recording, but maybe Tuesday at 8 is the best time. But for the rest of you, thank you for joining us. I'm still getting over a cold, so my voice is a little bit groggy, but that's okay. So this week, another week where we won't be working on your personal creed document, but this week's is the law of expectation. And then there are two arts, and then something that's like an art, but it's not called an art. So the law is the law of expectation, and then there's the art of positive self-talk and the art of positive vision. And then there's something we call the proactive operating process. Now, the last time we talked about the law of belief. Well, you'll notice that in this class, some things kind of cycle back. For example, the law of belief, beliefs might be similar to your values. The values we're going to be talking about for, again, the next couple of weeks. Your board of advisors might be repeated. Members of your board of advisors might be repeated in the second to last personal creed document that we call Life's Great Energizers. Today is the law of expectation. And I'm going to say a quote that we used when we talked about craft, where they said we always act in a manner that's consistent with our self-image. This time I'm throwing in our expectations, regardless of the reality of that self-image expectations. And before we talked about your social mirror and how we see the world. Well, it's very much true with expectations. Your expectations frame could have an impact on what you achieve, where you go, what you succeed at. And so we want to talk today about something that's a little bit different, but it fits in perfectly with the law of expectation. This comes from a talk by Carrie Wrigley called Christ-Centered Healing from Depression and Low Self-Worth. And she gave this talk at BYU. Now, what this is called the Wrigley Diamond. Now, we're going to talk about this just for a minute and share a couple of other ideas, because the art of positive self-talk and the art of positive vision and even the proactive operating process fit in perfectly with this. Now, do I have low self-worth? Am I depressed? Do I have anxiety? Yes, yes, and yes, sometimes. Now, I'm not, I haven't had times when I'm, like majorly depressed, but I've had stuff happen in my life, and I'm going to tell a little bit of a story today. And maybe this will help you for the times in your life when life just kind of kicks your butt. So this is how the diamond works. By the way, feel free, let me make sure I open up chat. Feel free to chime in anytime or ask if you have any questions, because this does apply to the lesson. So what happens in life is we have things that typically involve our relationships. And sometimes things involving our relationships may not always turn out great. We might have some grief. We might have transitions. We've talked about that in this class that are hard. We might have some conflict. We might, all of us at times, lack interpersonal skills where we're just not communicating the way we want to. We may have suffered or are suffering from abuse. We may have loss of opportunity, and we may have disappointments. So the story I'm going to share with you has to do with my brother, who's a year younger than me. He and I were born. I was born in 1960, and he was born in 1961. We lived in Cedar City, Utah. Does anybody know, this is a history test. Eric might be the closest one to being able to figure this one out. Does anybody know what was happening to those of us living in southern Utah in 1960 that may or may not have been a bad thing? Any idea? Think historically. I was brand new. I was born, so I was not aware of it at the time. Anybody? You're all stumped? I'm
Was a
not,
little before my time.
yeah, a little bit, a decade or so, right, Eric?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
About 7 years
7 years. So,
before I'd entered this world. So
so I didn't know what was going on when I was younger, but I learned about it later. What was happening to the west of where I lived was nuclear bomb testing. People would set their alarm and go watch the bombs go off. You could see them from Las Vegas, but the wind would carry the radiation away from Las Vegas and dump it on southern Utah. And so I'm what we call a downwinder. I just watched a show today where they talked about this. Um, it wasn't a couple of tests; it was hundreds of tests. Because I'm a downwinder, I run the risk of having certain kinds of bad things happen to me, like leukemia or certain kinds of cancers. Now, most of my life, I didn't, I knew about it, especially as I got older, but I didn't worry about it. And I'm a worrier too much. About 12 years ago, my brother, who was a year younger than me and who shared my bed with me growing up and is a downwinder, contracted brain cancer. And within 14 months, he died. He got a $50,000 check from the federal government. So what do you guys think happened to Steve Davis, the Worrier, when his downwinder brother died of brain cancer? Anybody?
you think you were next?
I did. Yeah, and I started to worry, and I even started demonstrating some symptoms of brain cancer, which led me to have severe anxiety and panic attacks. And then I got to where I wasn't sleeping. So it was about a 5-year period when the result of, and you can look at that 7 things, grieving for my brother, worrying about some things, led me to have some really kind of crappy thinking. My thoughts were, what if I was to get brain cancer? I'm a downwinder. What if I were to die and lose my wife and my kids and all of the things? So let's ask you guys, does anybody brave enough or can relate to something like that where their thoughts sent them in a not happy direction? Maybe even some low self-worth, some anxiety, or some depression. Anybody? Hopefully you're all, yeah, Eric.
I currently right now I am struggling with a depression and lots of anxiety and panic. Um, I've had my fair share of health issues in life.
Uh-huh.
My lower back's fused on 3 levels,
And then you fell.
and then I fell.
Yep.
And right now I'm waiting to hear back from the University of Utah Medical Center as to when I get to go see them down there, because I have a condition in my back called arachnoidosis, which there is no cure for and no surgery to make it better. And so it's going to be something that's debilitating, that's going to bother me for quite some time.
Yeah. So you have some top of diamond things happening, right?
Yeah.
You didn't fall on purpose. You didn't re-aggravate. You didn't re-aggravate that back problem on purpose, but you did,
No.
right? So
And I also have a kidney stone. Well, I have 4 kidney stones in me. One of them's out of the kidney, causing a lot of havoc.
yeah. Okay. So we could add 8, 9, and 10, right? Falling on your
Easily.
already injured back and having kidney stones. So here's the question. When our thoughts are causing us grief, our thinking, what are some ideas or tips that you guys have or would suggest? I have some I'm going to share with you what to do with your thinking. In the lesson today, we're learning about being positive with our thoughts. Any ideas? Okay, Addison says, be grateful. Brittany says, going hiking. Okay, you've already listed a bottom of the diamond thing. Okay, go to the temple. Bottom of diamond thing. Bottom of diamond is not a bad thing. I'll show you in a minute. Okay, another, go to the temple. Thank you, Thomas and Emily, for mirroring each other on those comments. Well, our thinking, so Brianna's talking about having a bad horse accident. And for a few months, the doctor's not being able to help. Okay, very frustrating. So the challenge with thoughts, we have negative or positive, worry and imagination, what if thinking, real versus imaginary dragons, left brain, right brain dynamic that we talked about before. And here's some thoughts with thoughts. Dr. Burns said, when you change the way you think, you change the way you feel. He wrote the New Mood Therapy book. And then Dr. Martin Rossman said, the discrepancy between the real and the imagined is the root of suffering. So the reality for me, and I've done a little research on this, I'm a downwinder. My chances of getting brain cancer are like 1 in 200,000. Eric, who's not a downwinder, his chances of getting brain cancer are like 1 in 500,000. The odds are still in my favor, right? I'm probably not going to die of brain cancer, okay? But when my thinking was so jacked up, my imagination was like, could, maybe, believe it, to the point that I was suffering and even having symptoms. The more our imagination, our bad thinking is divergent from our reality, the more we're going to suffer. So the thinking part is important, okay? So here's just some ideas. We can do the cancel replace craft. We can sing a hymn. We can rehearse, memorize scriptures, inspirational quotes, practice meditation. We can go do something positive, go on a hike, go to the temple, and visualize, imagine success. That's the proactive, positive vision. Go do something positive is the proactive operating process. So Agmanadino said, weak is he who permits his thoughts to control his actions. Strong is he who forces his actions to control his thoughts. So now we get to, I'm going to skip this for the sake of time. That's meditation stuff, but I'll send you a link to that. Now, what happens sometimes, we have these negative thoughts. They can result in negative behaviors. Now, the behavior part reinforces the bad thinking sometimes. So I'm going to tell you exactly what I did. I started having panic attacks and I started having trouble sleeping, severe trouble sleeping. So what did I do? I started Googling symptoms. Okay. Yeah, Eric's laughing. That's not a thought, that's an action, which just reinforces the bad thinking. I stopped doing some positive things. I started being depressed and sleeping more and not exercising and mumbling and grumbling and complaining. Those are actions. I'm going to teach you how I got better, by the way, and it has to do with thinking and actions. But one of the reasons I'm inviting you this week to watch Sean Acor's talk on positive psychology is because these are bottom of the diamond actions. Very much like Brittany said, going hiking, or Emily and Thomas said, going to the temple. Sean Acor, who is a Harvard professor, said we should do these 5 things every day. We should write 3 things down every day, 3 new things down every day that we're grateful for. We should journal, write in a journal and focus on, as Elder President Eyring would teach us, the things that are positive. We should exercise as much as we can. We should spend time to meditate. We should serve other people, random acts of kindness. Now, this 12 minutes or so talk, if you watch it anytime, I said before the meeting, but if you watch it anytime, just mention it in the class meeting report and lesson evaluation, and I'll give you some extra credit, okay? Most of you don't need it. Like nobody, just a couple in the class are missing some points, but just for fun. So the negative or positive behaviors can then affect the right side of the diamond, which is our spirit, our spirituality. Sometimes when we're behind the curve on depression or anxiety and feeling bad about what's happened in life, it can affect our spirit. So we need to keep doing the hygiene things of the spirit. We need to stay in our scriptures. We need to be saying our prayers. We need to be going to the temple. And in the end, These are the steps we do. But in the end, it helps us with our relationships. Again, we'll be better able to cope when this happens. So identify the negative thoughts and the negative behaviors. Replace them with positive thoughts and behaviors, and then practice them. If you're grumbly, speak kindly. If you are anxious, go out and serve somebody. If you are laying in bed feeling poor about yourself, follow Brittany's advice and go on a hike. Get out and exercise, okay? Now, here's what cured me, largely. This is another way to look at the Wrigley Diamond. This is called acceptance commitment therapy. There's a book out there called The Happiness Trap. The more we try to be happy and not be sad, the more likely we're going to fall into the trap of sadness because it's elusive, it's just beyond our grasp. So the first thing that we need to do with acceptance commitment therapy is we need to accept the fact that sometimes life is going to kick our butts. We're going to lose a brother. We're going to fall off this, whatever Eric fell off of and hurt his back. We're going to have a relationship that might go south. You might be passed up on a promotion. You might have people accuse you falsely. It is not going to be easy. Those things are hard. You'll have more luck if you accept the fact that this is a hard time. The second step, though, and this is where healing happens, is choose, sometimes they say connect with the value. Choose a value, and we're going to spend the next couple of weeks talking about your values. My values, like 1A and 1B tied, are my faith and my family. Well, I can sit here and be pissed off, mad, angry that something's not going quite right. And I can just wallow in pity and get more mad and have more negative thinking and do more negative behaviors and become more anxious and more depressed. Or I can say, well, I'm hurting right now, but I have things I value: my faith, my family, the outdoors, my health. Then you act on that value. In the midst of your pain, go act on things that matter most. Go on a hike, go to the temple, serve your spouse, serve your loved ones, okay? Now, here's the problem with this. Not a problem, because I practice acceptance commitment therapy. I got off all the medication I was on, started sleeping well again. I rarely worry about being a downwinder, even though I know I am. And I was able to get to where I was in a not depressed, not anxious, and a happier state. The problem with acceptance commitment therapy and books like this are great. I loved it. It saved me. There's nothing to do with faith in that book. They don't mention Heavenly Father. They talk about the fact that we struggle because everyone in this room, according to them, are descendants of cavemen. And cavemen walked out of their cave, tent, hut, whatever, every morning with two things on their mind. Today, am I going to eat or am I going to be eaten? And they lived in a constant state of fear. Well, these psychologists would say, we are hardwired to be fearful. And because of that, we live in fear. Well, I don't buy that part of it. So I discovered something from a teacher at BYU, Idaho, Brother Williams, where he taught about Liberty Jail and the lessons that Heavenly Father taught Joseph Smith in Liberty Jail. And I'm sitting in his lecture, and I thought, he's teaching, Heavenly Father is teaching to Joseph Smith acceptance commitment therapy. So with Brother Williams' blessing, I took those principles and the principles of acceptance commitment therapy, and I wrote a little book called Breaking the Chains of Worry and Anxiety. And I'm going to give you the summary of it. I'm going to put it here really fast, okay? Because I don't want to go over 30 minutes. Okay, so Joseph Smith is sitting in Liberty Jail for like 4.5 months. He's cold. He's persecuted. He doesn't have his family. And Heavenly Father's not answering his prayers. Finally, Heavenly Father, he says, Oh God, where art thou? Where is the pavilion that's covering your hiding place? And then finally Heavenly Father comes to him and said, Joseph, if thou art called to pass through these things, and he lists 17 bad things, the gates of hell open against you, your kids taken from you, persecuted, all these things. Those are the ifs in life. Those are the top of diamond things. We're going to have ifs, okay? Well, then he says, know, therefore, my son, that all these things will give you experience and be for your good, and I will be with you forever and ever. And then he said, therefore, hold on, fear not, and cheerfully do all things that lie in your power. And when you do those things, you'll understand that all of these things, even Eric's bad back, my brother dying of brain cancer, will be for my good, for your good, right? And so I thought, okay, this is acceptance commitment therapy. I'll just put this all out and we'll talk about it briefly. If bad things happen to us, acceptance commitment therapy would say, accept that this is a hard time. And if you understand that Heavenly Father's in charge of every part of your life, you'll have some peace knowing that this will be a temporary hard time. Know that I'm with you, but also know what your values are. Choose your values, connect with your values, your family, your faith. Therefore, take action. And the end thing is you will become what Heavenly Father wants you to become. So, little practice. And I'm going to end with two stories quickly. How am I doing time-wise? Oh, I've got a couple minutes. I'm going to make sure that I don't go over time. We call this STAR, but there's two A's. Okay? So when you're having a hard time, and especially the thinking part of your hard time, you should stop, pause, take a breath, accept things as they are. I'm not going to bring my brother back. I'm not going to make me a non-downwinder. I can't snap my fingers and make that happen. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. I'm worried. But then ask yourself what you really want. And if that asking yourself what you really want is tied to your value, and you act on the value, that's to react in a positive way with your values, then you're going to do and you're going to be better. Two stories to illustrate this. Story one. This is my Uncle Wells. My Uncle Wells is one of my heroes. He's in my personal creed document a couple of times. He happens to be, or was, he's passed away recently. He happens to be a professional psychologist, therapist. When he was about 65 years old, he suffered a major heart attack. Okay, think of that as a top of diamond thing, right? He recovered from his heart attack and lived, but he ended up living with a heart that was about 50% functioning. It was damaged permanently, non-repairable. Well, he had a choice. He could have laid in his bed and been mad and grumpy, and I'm sure there's times when he was, and thought, woe is me, I'm probably not going to live another year, and I'm going to be miserable, and I don't have the energy, and I'm sick, and I'm probably going to die. Those are the negative thoughts, and the negative actions could have been whining, murmuring, laying around, feeling sorry for himself, which could have affected his spirit. Well, my Uncle Wells made this very simple choice every single day. He lived up in northwestern Washington by a lake. He'd get up every morning. He would get his pontoon boat out, put it in the back of his pickup. In fact, he probably kept it in the back of his pickup. He would drive to 2 or 3 miles to the lake, and he would stay on that lake every day until he caught 5 fish. Every day. Does he look happy in that picture? He lived for another 20 years, happily. Tired at times, low energy at times, but he acted on his values and he lived a happy life. And then he'd go home and carve fan birds and give them to people. This is Fa Zing, and I'm going to send you a little article about my Uncle Wells that I wrote, and I'm going to send you an article about Fa Zing. This is Fa Zing. He's from India. When he was in his later years, his wife passed away. He was still living with his son, or by his son who helped him on his farm. One day a windstorm came up and it picked up a piece of sheet metal, and the sheet metal was flying through the air, and right in front of Faja, it decapitated his son, killed him right in front of him. Well, really hard top of diamond things. He could have really gone into a bad place. Maybe he did for a while, but Faja remembered how much he liked to run. This is Faja running the New York Marathon when he was 102. Okay? He chose to get out and do things that he loved, and he was happier and better because of it. So, well, I think this is it. I'll end with this quote. President Packer said, "It was meant to be that life would be a challenge, to suffer some anxiety, some depression, some disappointment, even some failure is normal. Teach our members that if they have a good, miserable day, once in a while or seven in a row, to stand steady and face them. Things will straighten out. There's a great purpose in your struggle, in our struggle in life." The problem we have today is we don't like to be sad or suffer for 2 minutes, let alone 2 months or 2 years. And we have all sorts of quick fixes. But the problem is the quick fixes are temporary. And often in the end, we don't really get better. So can or can't, it's a matter of expectation. It is up to you. Sorry, that was a little lecture-y, but it's something I care about a lot. And hopefully it'll be of help to some of you. So what I'm going to do as I pass this recording on to those who didn't join live and to all of you, and an email, I'm going to include the links to Sister Wrigley's talk. I just think it's one everybody should have in their back of their personal creed document for when life kicks their butt. And then there's a couple of articles about these things we've talked about. So this week, again, you have just one extra assignment from the typical assignments, no personal creed document. You're invited to watch a video about Dick and Ricky Hoyt. Rick and, I'm going to get it wrong. Dick and Ricky Hoyt. And just write a little paragraph, 2 or 3 sentences, not be long, about how that ties to the law of expectation. Then you have your case study activity, threaded discussion, class meeting report. And again, if you watch the Sean Acor video, just mention it in the extra credit or in the class meeting report that you watched it anytime this week, and I'll throw in some extra points as a bonus. Well, that was a lot of me and not much of you. Sorry. Any questions that anybody has before we close off for the night?
Can you go back to the star, Brother Davis?
Sure. Thank you. So that's the star. Stop, take a breath, accept things as they really are, ask yourself what you really want, and react in a positive way in line with your values. It could be act in a positive way, but then it'd be ST 3 A's. I like star, so we made it react. Okay, any other questions? All right, we're exactly at 8:30, so we're going to sign off. I'll stay on to answer any questions you have afterwards, but for the sake of all of you watching the recording, I hope you have a great rest of the week, and for the rest of you watching this live, you too. Thank you.